Welcome back to the Bro Show Thanksgiving week edition. I'm Jake alongside Chad, giving you the best picks for NFL and college football as you get ready to sit on your couch, digesting all that beautiful turkey and desserts, ready to win some money. Chad, how you doing? You excited for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I am. We were just talking off camera. I'm excited, but I'm a little anxious. Both my kids have got some sort of stomach bug, so that's definitely going to throw a wrench into the system. So I maybe eating turkey at home this year. We'll see.
Well, it always
But
put
I'll be watching football. I won't be distracted by my family wanting to talk to me about life and things like that.
That's true. It's always great to have football on the TV to distract from any illnesses, any sort of political chat at dinner you don't want to stay out of. And this Thursday night Thanksgiving game is one that you got to be paying attention to. Miami taking on Green Bay. There are 3 games on Thanksgiving. This is the night slate. Interesting spot here. Tua headed up north to take on Jordan Love and the Packers. What do you got here?
Again, we were talking off camera. So this season, those who've watched this and those who have followed my emailer every week know that I mentioned my system. And I was going to run through some numbers real quick. So far this season, my straight system plays are 30, 24, and 1. But that doesn't count because it's not documented. It's just a spreadsheet I have that I keep track of just to kind of help me with my betting. However, my Chad D's Big Swinging NFL picks is 31, 26, and 1. So not bad. Obviously a winner, especially if you're on BroThrow, you're not giving anything up to the house. So I say that to say this week I'm going to fade my own system for this game. I'm going to take Green Bay -3. My system says Miami. It actually shows it as a strong play. All else equal, I look at the trajectory of the Dolphins right now, 3-0 against the spread in their last 3 games, all wins. And since returning from his, dozenth concussion, Tua's thrown for a line of 1,277 yards, 11 touchdowns, and just 1 pick. On top of that, he's got Cheetah, he's got Waddle, he's got Jonnu Smith, Achane, rookie speedster, Jalen Wright. They're all healthy and they're all playing well. On top of that, their defense has held every team that's not first in their division, which is the Bills and the Cardinals, to fewer than 20 points. So to me, that says, hey, ride the tide and play the Dolphins. But then you look at this just glaring stat with Tua. The Hawaii native is 0-7 when playing in temperatures under 40 degrees in the NFL. And it's going to be well below that on Thursday night, probably somewhere in the teens or the low 20s. He's playing in Green Bay, where these guys are made to play. They're made to play in the snow. They're made to play in the cold. This is just, that's just, when you think of Green Bay, you think of postseason cold weather, right? So I think that Green Bay is directly in the mix, obviously, in their division. They can still win their division. They can still go ahead. And Green Bay's number 3 in the NFL in rushing the ball. So, they've done Josh Jacobs. They've done a fantastic job running the ball. And when you look at the Dolphins, they've had a pretty good defense against the rush. But I just think that 0-7, I went back and looked at a couple games when Tua played the Bills when it was cold in 22 and then in 23. And then obviously last year when they played the Chiefs in the playoffs in that -5 degrees, which is a completely different thing. But he just looked like he was in slow motion. So many balls fell short. He didn't look sharp. Looked like he was in pain the whole time. And if that's going to be the case, I'm going to bet on that on this Thursday, and I'm going to go Green Bay -3.
That point about Tua playing in the cold, I think, is a really big one. But I still kind of like Miami in this game. As you said, the Packers are a big-time running team. I've been saying that on this show all year long, that while they, Jordan Love gets all the buzz and the pass game gets all the hype, LaFleur runs that Shanahan zone run type system. But Miami, as you said, they have a top 10 run defense so far on the year. And Tua has been playing phenomenally ever since he came back from the concussion. Green Bay barely escaped with a win against the Bears 2 weeks ago. They deserved to lose that game. The Bears should have had the walk-off field goal that was blocked. And then last week, they went out and destroyed San Francisco, who had no defensive lineman and no quarterback. So I feel like their play recently has been a little bit worse than their record might indicate. going against a little bit easier competition. And now they have to go against a hot team who's playing well, who can both run and pass the ball. They can play defense. I actually kind of like Miami here, where your numbers initially indicated.
Yeah, like you said, they almost probably should have lost that game to the Bears. But when you go back and look at the tape, they had 3 touchdowns that were dropped. Dubs dropped a touchdown. Watson dropped one, maybe another one. And I think that the score wasn't indicative necessarily of that game. And maybe I'm just hoping that these guys figure out how to catch a football this week. But, I'm going to stick with it. I guess you're going to fade me, but I'm going to stick with it.
Well, moving on to a couple teams who have had less issues catching the ball, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Pittsburgh's offense has been really, really strong ever since they went over to from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson. A very controversial decision at the time. I don't think anybody's questioning it now. Everybody unanimously agrees that Russ was the right pick to go with. Russ is better than Fields, but I'm still riding with Cincinnati in this game, -3 at home. Pittsburgh has a really, really strong defense. That is probably the strength of their team, while their offense has been catching up to it recently. This is still a defensive-focused team with guys like Minka Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt. Historically speaking, Mike Tomlin is a defensive coach. He always runs a really, really strong defense. But Cincy's offense has been supremely good this season, and it's really a testament to how, unfortunate that their luck has been in winning games, that their record is only, 4-7, 5-7? So, Joe Burrow basically has the best stats of any quarterback in the NFL right now. He probably should be the MVP favorite if it weren't for the overall team success. And I look at a spread like this, where we know that 3 points in the NFL, or home field advantage, is worth about 3 points in the NFL. So the bookmakers are kind of saying that Pittsburgh and Cincinnati are equal on a neutral site. That doesn't really make a ton of sense, given that I think most people would say that Pittsburgh has looked a lot better this year than Cincinnati. So this line looks very sketchy to me. I'm going to be taking Cincy -3 and say that their offense is going to put on a show. Burrow's going to continue to put up big stats. See guys like Chase, T. Higgins had a monster game recently. Chase Brown has looked really, really good coming out of the backfield. And I think that Cincy has too much offensive firepower here. I'm riding with them -3 at home.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you here. Last week I picked the Steelers and I felt really confident about that. But then I came back and thought to myself, anytime there's an NFL storyline, run with the storyline. So last week, Nick Chubb came back, or he's been back for a couple of weeks, but he blew out his knee last year against the Steelers. And, so he's coming back against the Steelers in a game where he blew out last year. And then on top of that, you've got Jameis Winston, right? The free flow master in the NFL. Who doesn't love listening to his pregame, postgame speeches? It's just hilarious. Nothing he says makes any sense, but it's hilarious to watch. And, so that was kind of the storyline last week. Jameis Winston coming in a big game against a rival. Nick Chubb comes back. So it was one of those where it's like, I know it's a conspiracy at this point, but how many times is there just a storyline that works out for the NFL? So I personally think that the Russ Wilson magic is going to start fading here, right? Yes, he's looked great. And the Steelers have played really well this season, leaning heavily on their defense. And then when Russ came in, they got that injection on offense, and he looked good. But I think that this is a spot where I'm definitely going to fade. Like you mentioned, Joe Burrow has been outstanding. He's thrown for over 3,000 yards already this season through 12 games or 11 games, and he's thrown 27 touchdowns. So third in passing yards and tied for first with Lamar Jackson in passing touchdowns. He's been outstanding, and the defense has just let him down. In 5 of those 7 games, they had an opportunity to win. They lost by a score or less. So, the defense has let them down. In most of those games, Burrow and the offense did what they needed to do to drive and score late in the game, and then the defense just gave it up. So, I think this is a spot where they're going to get over the hump. They're at home, and I look for the Bengals, like you said, to cover.
All right, well, let's move on to the last game that we're going to talk about for the NFL slate this week. Rams taking on the Saints. We talked about the weather in the Miami-Green Bay game. This game in a dome, no weather implications. What are you seeing here?
So I'm going to talk about the Saints first. They're coming off of a bye. They're playing at home. And it's well known that Caesars Superdome is one of the toughest environments to play in. The Saints fans are outstanding. They're loud. They dress up every game. It's just a crazy place to play. And so I actually think that, like you mentioned earlier, that in the NFL, the home field advantage is 3 points. I definitely think that's the case when the Saints play at home. But these teams are basically even in the power rankings, which is one of the main drivers of my number system that I use. And so I have to ask myself, if these two teams are generally ranked in the same level, I think it's -4 and or -2 and -0.2 and -0.6, which is roughly the same. I have to figure out why the Rams are favored. So it's kind of an odd line. And so what I've come up with for this week is I've got Sean McVay over Clint Kubiak. I've got Matthew Stafford in a dome over Derek Carr. And then I look at the offensive weapons and their health, right? So Cooper Kupp's back. Puka Nakua's back, who's been just an absolute catch monster. And then you've got Olave and Raheed Shaheed, who are both on IR. So Valdez-Scantling is the number one in New Orleans right now. And, he's kind of been a journeyman. He's kind of jumped all over. Hasn't been, a number one wide receiver, but that's what they're working with. So I'm gonna try and take those three factors and lay this in here, and I'm gonna lay the points with the Rams.
I mean, Saints still have Alvin Kamara. I would still argue he's basically the number one option, even in the receiving game and the run game. But the Saints have been not terrible. I mean, Olave and Shaheed have been out a little while now, and they've still been doing an all right job moving the ball on offense. This line feels very, very tricky to me. It feels like this is a game that the Rams are going to win exactly by 3. I think this is probably a stay away. It feels like the number is bang on here. I kind of like the over, though, if you like, the offensive weapons from the Rams. I tend to agree with you that they're playing really, really well on offense right here. And because the Saints have been able to keep up offensively, even with some of their, skill position guys out, I don't mind taking the over 49.5 number here. It feels like the Saints, they trade away Marshawn Lattimore. Their defense is not amazing. So it feels like if the Saints are going to be in this game and keep it competitive within the 3-point line, it's going to be in a higher scoring affair. So I don't mind, any spread take, but I think I prefer the over here.
Okay.
And if you want to ride the over, you want to ride the Rams, you want to ride any of the picks we talked about in this video, go to BroThrow.com/YouTube to sign up right now for free. Get even odds on every single over-under spread and better odds on money lines than anywhere else you can find for all sports, NFL, NBA, NCAA football, NCAA basketball, whatever you want to bet on, BroThrow has it. And special this week for Thanksgiving, there is a free Thanksgiving football contest to enter for both NFL and NCAA picks. 15 total picks. BroThrow is putting up $250 for the winner. Absolutely free to enter. No reason why not to. Sign up right now, BroThrow.com/YouTube, and enter this contest for absolutely free for your chance to win. And this week only, for every friend that you sign up to BroThrow, you will get a $10 referral as well. So no better time to get on BroThrow with NFL, NBA, NCAA sports. Perfect time to sign up at BroThrow.com/YouTube. All right, we got the plugs out of the way, Chad. Let's move over to the college football portion of this video. Big week in college football, big rivalry week, last full week of the season. And there are some very important playoff implications on the line. Let's talk about this Texas A&M game first. Huge rivalry game, first of all, to start off with. Now, if you recall, many years ago, Texas and Texas A&M were both in the Big 12. Texas A&M left the Big 12 to go to the SEC, and they said, we are done playing Texas. They took Texas off the schedule. They said, we don't care about the rivalry. We're in the SEC now, whatever. Now Texas has joined them in the SEC. They haven't played in a few years at this point, and it's still a massive rivalry. Texas is pretty secure in the college football playoff at this point. Texas A&M had a heartbreaking loss last week to Auburn in triple overtime, maybe quadruple overtime. I think it was triple overtime. But that kind of knocked them out of the running for the SEC, or sorry, for the playoffs. Now their best path is to go out and win the SEC championship game, which they still have a chance of being in if they can beat Texas this weekend. I actually do like Texas A&M +5 in this game. I think this is a nice bounce back spot after Auburn. And more importantly, Texas is, I don't want to say a fraudulent team, but if you look at their schedule, they've had one of the easiest and weakest schedules in all of college football so far this season, right? Their premier victories are against Michigan and Oklahoma, two teams who are probably the two most disappointing teams in all of college football this season. Neither one of them are in the rankings. Both of them, I believe, are 6-5 in the record right now. Otherwise, they beat Vanderbilt. I guess that's their other technical ranked win. They're also 6-5. They got blown out by Georgia in really their one true test. And some of their other games have been like, a little bit closer than you want to give it credit, than you want to necessarily see from a national championship contending team. So now they have to go on the road in a huge rivalry game to Kyle Field, which is one of the biggest stadiums in the country. The crowd is going to be hyped. It's at night. Texas A&M's coming off a loss. I love getting +5 here for the Aggies.
Yeah, you actually said all the notes that I had written down. They beat Michigan, OU, and Vanderbilt, all 6-5 teams. They beat Florida, unranked, also 6-5, and none of those teams right now are ranked. They beat Michigan when they were 10. They beat OU, I think, when they were 18 or 16, something like that. But no longer are they ranked. So this program, strength of schedule, like you said, just isn't up to par. And I hate talking about strength of schedule, but 6-5, 6-5, 6-5, 6-5. Those are their big wins, and they dropped one, like you said, to Georgia at home, almost embarrassingly. So the other factor that I'm kind of considering here is really anytime there's a major question mark in major personnel, it's kind of a wild card and it's a stay away from me, right? So it looks like Manning's going to start. Is that still the case?
I think it's up in the air. The issue with college is there's no official injury reports, so we really won't find out until probably the game starts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good. Luckily for Texas, Manning is probably the strongest backup quarterback, in college football if he ends up starting. So it's a wild card. I'm probably going to stay away. But, A&M's been so inconsistent. Like you said, they lost to Auburn last week. They've got a couple big wins on the ticket. But, lost to South Carolina, who's really, really grown in their strength as the season goes on. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. And I personally can't stand either of these teams. You mentioned way back they were both in the Big 12. But even before that, they were in the Texas plus Arkansas Southwest Conference. And so these rivalries go a long way back. And, I hate Texas probably second most to OU, and then third is A&M. So I'm not going to root for either of these teams. But, gun to my head, I'm going to give it to the 12th man, and I'm going to take the points at home at night, for Texas A&M with you, if I bet it.
Fair enough. Well, you did just mention South Carolina. Let's talk about that game next. They're heading over to Clemson, a little rivalry battle in the Carolinas, out of conference, of course, SEC versus ACC. What do you see here, Clemson versus South Carolina?
Well, I'm going to start off with a little bit of a diatribe here. Even if South Carolina wins this game, they don't deserve to be in the playoffs, okay? They've lost 3 games, and any 3-game losers do not deserve to be in the playoffs, period, full stop. Okay, you can yell at me. You can talk about strength of schedule. You can talk about whatever it is you want to. The SEC. That's all bullshit, in my opinion, anymore. Because you don't have the Alabama domination. You don't have the LSU domination like that used to have, right? The SEC for a long time was the strongest conference in college football, and I just don't think that's the case anymore. So we can't lean on that SEC with 3 losses, whether it's South Carolina or Alabama. Get that out of here, okay? Now, that being said, for this game and this game only, I will consider their 3 losses. LSU lost by 3, or South Carolina lost to LSU by 3. They got blown out by Ole Miss, whatever, it happens. And then they lost by 2 to Bama at Bryant-Denny. Okay. Freshman Lenore Sellers has been pretty solid as a true freshman. 17 touchdowns, 6 picks, and then he's added 5 rushing touchdowns to his total. I think he's going to be a problem in the next couple of years. And I think he's probably going to be a problem this week as well. So you've got Lenore Sellers, and then I got to shout out Rocket Sanders, former Razorback. We hated to see him go, but we got LaQuindon Jackson to fill his spot, so we were okay with it. But he's been really solid for South Carolina as well. I think he ranks 3rd in the SEC in rushing. And again, we're tired of hearing about the strength of schedule, but it has to be said about Clemson. They've played one ranked opponent, Georgia, in week 1, and they were held to 3 points. Granted, it was the first game of the season, and over the past few years, Clemson has really kind of grown throughout the season. If you look at their trajectory last few seasons, they've gotten stronger. At the beginning of the season, we said Cade wasn't the man, but he's actually had an outstanding season. I think he's got 27 touchdowns, 2,800 yards, something like that. But again, who are they playing? And I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I think it really is important in this game. But most importantly, this is where my lean comes from. I've got a 14-year-long alliance with one of my buddies from Clemson. First jobs out of college, we worked together, trying to sell servers over the phone. And he roots for the Hogs, and I root for the Tigers. And when I'm in doubt about a spread or a game, I ask him if we're going to cover. Now, he's not really a betting man, but I've kind of kept track of when he says we cover, we don't cover. And he's got a pretty good non-betting record just through chatting with him. He says take the Gamecocks money line, and so I'm going to take the points here.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And the one factor you didn't talk about, which is one of the biggest reasons why I like South Carolina, is the line. -2.5 for Clemson. They're begging you to bet on Clemson. You can get them at home for less than a field goal. Remember, home field advantage is worth 3 points. So on a neutral site, the books are saying South Carolina will be a half-point favorite. That doesn't make a ton of sense, right? You'd think Clemson would be the better team. They're not. South Carolina's a better team. I agree with you on all accounts. They've been super, super hot recently. They've won 5 consecutive games ever since that loss to Bama. As you said, their losses to Bama and LSU by a 3 and 2 point margin. They were very competitive in both those games. They very realistically could have won both those games. And if that's the case, then we're looking at them as like a top 5 ranked team in the country. I mean, how could you have them below Texas when they're in the same conference with the same record with better wins? So I think South Carolina is a little bit underrated right now. I definitely like them on this spot as well, +2.5. All right, and then for the final game we're talking about this weekend, how could it be anything other than the game? Michigan taking on Ohio State, the biggest rivalry in the Big Ten. Some might say in the country, but we'll just say at least the Big Ten for now. And
yeah, sure.
Ohio State had a nice performance last week against my Hoosiers. Unfortunately for the Hoosiers, they botched multiple punts, giving up a punt return touchdown, and they just dropped the snap on a punt that allowed Ohio State to get the ball inside the 5-yard line. So 2 touchdowns from them on that. They also added a garbage time touchdown in the last play of the game when IU was letting them kneel, and they said, no, we're going to take the extra touchdown here. Ryan Day, very classless. Signetti will remember that in the future. But now they're taking on their number 1 rivals, Michigan. And Michigan, as we've been saying on this show all year long, is bad. They have no quarterback, and they have very tough time moving the ball, especially when the run game isn't working. Well, Ohio State has one of the best defenses in the country, including one of the best rush defenses in the country. And now they're in a rivalry spot at home where they haven't beaten Michigan since 2019. It's been over 5 years since Ohio State has actually won a matchup in this series. I think they're going to be out for blood, right? They are, about to be in the Big Ten championship game. Even if they lose this game, they're still in the Big Ten championship game. But Michigan has a real trouble moving the ball. We've seen over-under here of only 43 points with a 21-point spread. So the books are kind of implying that this is going to be a low-scoring blowout for Ohio State. That sounds right to me. And we know, as we saw last week, that Ryan Day has no issue running up the score late. He has done that, historically in his career. They're more than willing to go for touchdowns at the end of the game to cover the spread. I just find it very, very difficult to see Michigan competing in this game. And I think Ohio State is going to have no trouble running the score up on them. I will lay the 21 points here with Ohio State. Michigan is just so bad, I can't put any money on them with no quarterback in this big-time rivalry spot.
Now, you've said a lot about this game, and I know you have some more thoughts on Ohio State last week versus Indiana. No, it's still a sore spot.
I'll just sum it up.
But
I'll just sum it up. Ryan Day is classless. It is what it is.
Hey, yeah, and Renna QB, Will Howard as well. But I want to touch on a couple of things from last week. Indiana held Ohio State to their fewest offensive yards all season, right? Like you said, the score looked like a blowout, and that's what all the pundits are saying. Yeah, Indiana, they don't deserve to be in. They got blown out in the one hard game they played, whatever. But like you said, they essentially gave up two touchdowns on punting or attempting to punt the ball. We could talk about the 3 missed blocks in the back on the return punt if you want, but what's done is done. The game is over. Now, at the same time, Ohio State held Indiana to just 151 yards on offense. And Indiana is a much better offense, obviously, than Michigan. It's not even close. You look at the points, the disparity between the teams that they've played. They've covered their spreads. They've been an outstanding offense all season. They've been an outstanding defense all season. Even though Indiana got thumped in that game by the score, if they don't make the playoffs, this whole thing's broken, and I'm gonna riot with you. I'm gonna drive up there. I'm gonna put on your IU stuff, and we're gonna riot. Okay. But now on to Michigan. 5-loss Wolverines, headed to Columbus to play number 2 Buckeyes. But the Buckeyes have exactly 2 impressive wins this season: Penn State and Indiana. So it gives me a little bit of pause. Yes, they are good. Yes, they are number 2. But again, we're saying Indiana hasn't played anyone. Neither has Ohio State. I mean, they lost to Oregon, right? That's their one loss. So while I do believe in karma, I do believe that Day is going to have his day, and I do believe that Will Howard also a little bit of classlessness, putting the sig out on the sidelines after they ran the score up in the final seconds. But I got to agree with you. Ohio State's they're gonna completely shut down Michigan's offense. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have the same or offense that they had. And if given the chance, if they're going to run the score up on Indiana, they're going to run the score up on Michigan, especially in this rivalry. Come late in the game, if they could score again and cover that 21, Ryan knows. Ryan knows what the spread is, and he wants to cover it.
I mean, I believe Michigan in the past couple of years have also run up the score on Ohio State in this game. So, fair is fair, right? They're going to go for the same. But that is going to do it for this edition of the Bro Show. A great breakdown of the Thanksgiving games. And remember, if you want to put in all your picks for absolutely free, go to brothrow.com/YouTube to sign up for the free Thanksgiving contest for your shot at winning $250 on BroThrow. Chad, anything else you want to leave the viewers with before we go on this one?
Happy Thanksgiving, spend some time with the fam, watch some football, eat some turkey, drink some beers. Have a good week.
Absolutely. Wishing the best to everybody watching this video. Have an amazing Thanksgiving, and we'll see everybody in the next one. Peace.